mic's yours, Obs.
We need more Japanese. We need more Japanese games localized over here. Okay, that's all.
We do. I would love to see ways.
My topic is quite juicy indeed. It's something that you failed to mention about the Tokyo Game Show. I'm of course talking about the KFC releasing their dating sim with Colonel Sanders.
Did I really forget to mention it, or did I want you to say it?
Oh no, I've stumbled into your trap.
You've activated my trap card. Reverse Uno.
Yep. No, I had one card left. I'll never get to play now. He's going to make me draw 4.
Draw 4.
When I played the draw 4 card, he draws 4 cards from the deck and adds them to his hand. No.
Oh, God.
No, I'm going to talk about the same thing I talked about last time. In a way, but different. I've hinted at this topic before. And, you and I, we've had discussions on this before.
Yes.
We talked about it at Gen Con a little bit. It's when Spooky kind of talked me in a little bit to, give another game a shot. I was like, okay, I'll go buy the book at least. And I'm talking about the FFG RPG. We talked about the beta before, our thoughts on kind of narrative DOS and stuff. We even had a session of the beta that we played for one of our monthly modules.
Yeah.
I got the book at Gen Con, like I said. I started reading through it, and I was like, they did fix, a good bit of some of my problems that I had with the game, particularly with the unmasking. You were kind of forced to do it then and there. Now the player has a lot more agency on when they can unmask. And, you're kind of encouraged to do it, especially if you build strife in combat. But, I'll talk about that more in a second. So, I just recently started not this past week, but the week before, we had our first session of a new home game that I started for L5R, which is, we're playing during the Onyx storyline. So, I've ran our T-Dot, our Third Day of Thunder game. That's based off the RHS, the modern storyline stuff. So I'm going to do like that kind of, but how it would have played out probably in the game or the actual.
Oh, the actual story.
The actual storyline, with like those characters and all the stuff. So like the actual feudal version of the more feudal, like medieval version of it.
Yeah, the actual true setting to the game, not a contemporary one.
Yep. So I told all my players, I was like, y'all pick a clan, pick one clan. You're all going to be from that clan. You can play different schools if you want. Just have a backstory reason, all that good typical stuff you do. I wanted them all to like have strong ties because I more wanted to tell a war story with the campaign. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to like go on about what the game's about or anything. I more want to talk about the system and like I've actually enjoyed running it a lot because the game does focus more on the narrative side of it and kind of the role-playing informs the DOS in a way because, the character's approach to a certain problem is going to elicit a certain skill roll with a certain ring. So,
let's just talk about that real fast here. Yeah. I love that.
Yes, this is probably my favorite thing about the game.
Best part about this game is the fact that every ring, you want to roll like a diplomacy. Okay, fine. Do you want to roll diplomacy water, diplomacy fire, diplomacy air? Because they all can work, but it's all dependent on how you react to it. And this is for how every skill in this game works. I love it. I love
it's really cool.
The fact that this game emphasizes certain approaches with certain rings.
Mm-hmm. So like for an example of like how I approach it as a GM would be, all right, the players want to convince their lord to allow them to give them like an item or something like that. Say that's like an example. There's multiple approaches.
Give them really good horses.
Yeah, sure. Say he's going to give them a mule. They want ponies, though. Yeah. I'm going to give you a mule and cart because that's all. Well, we want ponies. So you can go. So I'll go, okay. In the old game, you usually go, okay, make a courtier awareness roll. Or if you're lying, make a sincerity or deception. I can't remember skill for you.
If you're like a phoenix, you could use also knowledge instead. They were like,
Sure.
Certain classes would actually certain courtier classes would actually change up like what trait you used, but it was still, the point was you only used that trait at that point. You only focused on trying to utilize that trait.
Exactly, or at least as the base rules described it. I mean, you can like do that too in 4th edition, but so if one player goes, I want to appeal to my lord's, reason and logic. Obviously, we got to get there faster. This is a pressing issue. We're going to need horses, not a mule and cart. So I might go, okay, make a courtesy roll with Earth Ring, because you're using reason and logic, which is very earthy. If maybe you want to make an impassioned plea and say, I'm one of your loyal vassals. I'm going to need more than this. You might make a fire check, because that's more of an appeal to emotions. If you're trying to elicit some kind of like emotional response out of whoever you're talking with. You could just straight up lie to someone. Then I would go, okay, don't make courtesy, make a skullduggery check with air, because you're trying to trick your lord into giving you horses instead of the mule and cart. So, or maybe like you would use void if there's some kind of supernatural thing, like I don't know, maybe you knew like the horse or the mule was tainted or something like that, and you're like, he doesn't know that. I might want to make that, my void might come into play, or maybe there's like some bad omen that or water is you all hear force of charisma, which is kind of interesting because air has always been the social stat in Legend of the Five Rings role-playing. So water is actually your more like raw, like charismatic ability to, if you just straight up want to go, you should just, it's the normal, like, if I don't know what to role play kind of thing, water is kind of like the default. So I'll always go, all right, role play how you ask them, and then you can make the roll afterwards. If they do it especially well, I might give them like free opportunities, or let them like set like a blank to an opportunity, something cool like that. That's a really cool approach that I love, the problem solving, because it brings what's your character's approach, get in their mindset, you delve more into your character's head, like, how am I doing this? And you're less trying to game it all the time. And I've noticed, a lot of people might say, well, they'll always roleplay a certain way. I've noticed so far that my players have not always steered towards, like, their higher rings. A lot of times they've been like, I want to do it this way because it's cool. I'll go, all right, that's a fire check, and I got fire 1, crap, and but they think it's awesome. They love it, so.
Yeah, that is this kind of thing. Same thing is that it is. You're gonna get min-maxing. There's no way you can avoid the min-maxing.
Sure, yeah, it is there. It will rear its head. It is
there. It'll never go away. It's just a different form. But the versatility and the accessibility helps kind of cool off the need for that strong min-maxing. At least to a lesser extent. If you always want to make an impassioned plea, you're always gonna play your character like they're making impassioned pleas. That's just. Mm-hmm. That's how they're going to be.
Yeah, and your character's always going to have, like, their go-to, like, approach to problem solving. And that's kind of like, will reinforce, like, is your character a very logical person? They're probably going to, are they always trying to appeal to reason? Are they, like, steadfast, loyal? Are they hardy? They're going to have a high, those are, like, the earthy traits. Are they more of a trickster kind of character? Are they deceptive?
Yeah, exactly.
Air. Do they adapt to their situation? Water. Are they impassioned? Are they the Matsue or their fire?
That said, the accessibility for the other rings to allow for a more appropriate response to the situation means that your character doesn't always feel like they need to min-max a certain thing to be good at that area.
No.
In this comparison, and I think that's like a lot of people say, it's not as easy to min-max. And that's not right. I'm going to flat out disagree. That's not right. You can min-max anything. I've seen it. You can do it. You can do it in Bloody Fate. And that game is like...
They'll find a way.
They'll find a way. If you stat it, players can kill it. If you can create it, players will maximize it.
If it's got a number, it's going to get higher.
That's exactly the truth. But what makes the difference is the accessibility of it. Because in L5R 4th edition, in order to be a good the talker, you have to have essentially 2 high stats, awareness and willpower, so that you can resist the talks and that you can give the talks. Mm-hmm. And that's really all that mattered. A higher honor also meant that you could also benefit against resisting like temptations and stuff like that.
Yep.
But those are the only 2 stats you're really going to utilize. Your GM is not going to be like, I use fire, so make that roll instead. You're gonna use core tier fire. That's just not how it works. They don't do that kind of thing, and that's the reason for it. But that means that players essentially have to kind of invest in those two stats, and that's what we see them min-maxing. It's an easy min-maxing because those are the two stats they need up to be good at it, to be competitive with it. And in 5th edition, that's not the case. You don't need those stats to, you don't need to only focus on one stat in order to talk to somebody and succeed at all the times. You can have a character, the GM can actually make it so that if the stat that the character might normally go to, like let's say they're a very passionate character, they're a character that appeals to emotion, fire, they might actually have a character who they're trying to convince, and that dude does not care about fire. He doesn't care about the emotions of something. He's a very
You gotta find another way to do it.
You might get penalized. You might say he's like, all right, but you like they might find out like, no, his excuse me, his DC is really high versus fire, but it's actually really low versus earth.
That's something else I was gonna say too, and I'm glad you said that. Another really cool thing that the game does, and these are built into techniques, and you can do them as a GM too, like in the example Meta was saying, you can adjust the difficulty based on the ring that the players are using. So it might be a base TN3 difficulty. If you use air, it's a 2. If you use earth, it's a 5. Or fire, it's a 4. So they have basically like a sliding scale of difficulty based on how they approach that generally will make sense. Actually, it's pretty cool.
It also means it benefits you to actually learn about this character if you're going to go in. One of the big things about it is that when you're doing like a subtlety or like espionage, you're in espionage, you're in there. Let's say you're a Scorpion group, okay? Classic Scorpion group is we go and assassinate some dude. Your lord has sent you in to figure out this dude, but you have to get past some roadblocks, and one of those roadblocks happens to be a guy who kind of makes it near impossible to get to your target. What do you need to do? You need to learn about this guy. What is his tics? What is he like? Whatnot, and so forth. If you were to do that in 5th edition, you could find out what rings he's easiest to bend, and then utilize arguments like that to beat him at those rings. In L5 4th edition, you really couldn't do that. It would just be, again, per base game, you would just awareness the crap out of the guy, and that's it.
Yep.
And that would be the end of it. This game actually benefits to understand who you're dealing with, because they might be harder to convince one way or the other. And even those characters, and here's what you get really detailed on it, that could flip-flop depending on the circumstance of the characters. Normally, they're a very logical and reasonable person until they're stressed, and at that point, they become lost, scatterbrained, and emotion is really good to appealing to them by confronting them like it's logical. You can do that kind of stuff. You can really change it up on players, and it actually benefits, again, to know your target before attacking the target. And in this case, I think L5R 5th edition is probably one of the best asset is the fact that you can do that. In fact, I really, really want to try to implement that some way into 4th edition. That's how much I love it.
Yeah, it's really good, and I think it's something that you could easily implement.
I think so too,
as well.
I think 4th edition would easily be able to implement that something like that especially for role playing stuff as opposed to really combat. Combat might be a little bit harder, but but
just because of the way the schools are built and some of the other stuff. But definitely for social stuff, I can totally, or like investigative stuff.
Absolutely,
pretty much anything that's not combat, I think you could pretty much like easily just do it that way. So
yeah.
Combat's actually really cool too, because a way it kind of discourages min-maxing is the crit system. If you stay in one ring top, and one of my players found this out the hard way, he's fighting with a spear, so he always wants to kind of be in water stance. Why does he want to be in water stance? Because he can only attack someone from 2 range bands away. Being in the water stance in combat lets you take another action that doesn't involve a dice roll. So you can normally only move 1 range band. You could move twice, for example, or you could ready a weapon and move once. So since he always has to be 2 away, he wants to always be in water to get away from the people who are advancing on him and keep that distance. So he like to stay in water a lot. He has water 3 too, so I mean he wants to roll with that and for his best chance to hit. That's also what you defend with against crits. So when he got crit, he got severely wounded in water, so all of his TNs went up by 2. Suddenly, he's having to find different approaches to be effective in combat. He can't just stay in water all the time, or he's not really going to be able to do that much. and he might risk further injury to his water ring. He might take a severe wound and like a actual maiming injury, I believe is what they call it, where he could like lose a foot or a leg or something horrible if he just adamant stays in that stance. So it kind of encourages you to like at least like get like 2. I mean, you kind of want 2s and everything or 3s,
Yeah,
and everything in the old game, just because you need insight to rank up. You have to up your rings to advance in your school in the old game. But you kind of want it just so you don't run out of options in combat. And I like that normally in the past when we played, we'll just be like, all right, I attack with my katana. And we don't really describe, combat. It's actually been really cool because we've been narrating based on the rings have even adaptations in combat. Water is all about positioning and getting around your opponent. So when he's in water, like he's describing how his character like backs up and is like seeking like he finds like a higher position or whatever and uses it to his advantage. Or the earth guy will like let the guy come in if he's in his earth stance and he'll like withstand like a blow and then retaliate. Or the fire, you'll just like go full out attack, like put your emotion into your swing. Your void is like contemplating, the situation of being like very meditative. It's been really cool for like the narrative aspect of combat too.
It definitely gives an incentive for it. The combat for the game as well, because it's tied to the multiple stance elements, also has kind of a type advantage system, a little bit on the background going on for it. There are certain kata techniques specifically that will actually change the TN depending on what your opponent's stance is in.
Yep.
And if you want to know the type advantage circle, so to speak, air tends to beat earth, earth tends to beat water, water tends to beat fire, and then fire tends to beat air. And I actually liked that typing because it makes sense from a very Asian perspective for what it's pulling from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that air can, if you want to think about it, it's like air can kind of cross over the mountain or go around it, so the mountain doesn't do anything to stop air. However, air is consumed by fire. It fuels it, but fire is put out by water. It's doused by it. It can't survive in water.
Mm-hmm.
But waves can do little to crash up against. Waves can do very little to harm a mountain or the earth itself. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the mindset that's going through it. Those kata, if you know what your opponent is standing in, you might have a kata that takes advantage of that, and it might make it even harder for them to resist whatever the effect is.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love the fact that like there's kind of almost like a small mini game going on inside of just the combat itself.
Yeah, you want to like go after the person that your techniques are going to help you exploit.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool.
And you're going to want to build a character whose techniques can cover themselves so that you're not being exploited as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to make a well-rounded character in this game.
Yeah, this game really does like want to force you into like do not specialize exclusively. If you do that, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, you can do it. You can min-max, but it will like your ring will eventually get crippled, and you'll have no options. So you'll be pretty effective for like a round or two.
I would definitely say that this is a 5th edition requires that you at least enhance 2 to 3 rings and then keep the other 2 close behind before eventually reaching the really higher levels.
Yeah, you'll just want to do that too if you want to advance in your school fairly quickly. One thing I'll say about combat, it is hard to figure out how it works at first. I had to I listened to a podcast of people playing the game. That helped a lot. I had to read through like multiple combat scenarios to really understand. I couldn't quite grasp it. And I'm not like a read and understand type of learner. I have to like experience and do things. That's how I learn things. So like reading those scenarios, helped me go, okay, well this is how this works. This is how the crit system is applied. So on. Like the book doesn't explain it the best way in my opinion. Some stuff that it does. L5R's always done this. It drives me crazy. There will be like key things and sidebars that don't jump out at you. It'll be like this is in this section, but this is in this section up here. So it's lots of like flipping. The book could definitely be laid out better.
Organized. This. Oh god, that's.
They also, in my opinion, need more kata right now.
Oh yeah, they do.
It seems like those have gotten the least attention. Now the game's only been out for I think a little over a year, and there's been lots of material put out for the role-playing game.
So many books that have been put out for this game that there's really no excuse for why kata have not been really expanded upon.
Yeah, I think Courts of Stone has like 2, but they're more for spear users. It added a lot of ninjutsu and shuji because it's a court game and it's all about intrigue and stuff. I think they're kind of like doing a ring theme with some of the books. So Shadowlands is very earthy. I think it has a few kata, but they're more focused on like combating the Shadowlands and some spells that help you do that.
I think they're trying to expand out in the areas that they haven't touched on yet. But
I think they're doing a Ronin and Minor Clans book next. Yep. Is the next one. So I can see some watery stuff. Maybe there'll be more kata in that. Because kata are now very like general, like everyone can learn everything kind of thing. There's not a whole lot of clan techniques and stuff going on.
It's which is kind of a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Also state it's a little bit sad.
It's sad, but it's kind of a neat idea.
It's interesting for what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know. I think it's a very opinion-based thing. Some people are absolutely going to say it's like it really does ruin like what the schools were. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, y'all have spent like 2,000 years with each other thus far, and nobody has figured out the technique from another clan.
Even like go study with the other clans. You don't like pass along any of that lore to anyone.
I was gonna say you don't tell anybody. Like, what do you put on an oath and like everybody's honorable enough they would never reveal the secrets from another clan?
Yeah,
really? Scorpion? That's absolutely not a Scorpion thing.
Don't let the Scorpion into your clan school.
They'll spill the beans.
Yep. So yeah, the curriculum's kind of a neat idea. It does. I think at first you only, and I could be completely wrong. I think in the beta you got less XP or even no XP for going out of curriculum. Now you get half XP.
In the beta, if you were not buying things that were a part of your school curriculum, then you didn't get any points. You didn't get any college credits. Yeah, you didn't get any college credits towards your diploma. So
it's pretty cool, and you don't, like I said, you don't have like a technique every rank now. The ranks are kind of like don't really mean that much other than like what you have to learn to achieve the next one. You have your first technique and your like capstone rank 6, or as they call it, mastery technique. So
it's almost kind of remind me, like, not to make the joke here, but it's like welcome to L5R, where the ranks don't matter and the points are made up.
Yeah. It makes even more sense now, meta.
It does. It's kind of like that's kind of what it feels like. Honestly, the advancement of like different, like going into different ranks, so to speak, have really no meaning. They're just different stepping stones that kind of build a progression line. It's really just for you. How fast do you want to get to 6? Do you want to focus only on what your school truly specializes in? Well, then that will get you 6 the fastest. Otherwise, it's kind of like these are just like what will give you the biggest bonuses towards getting to your actual final technique, which does take a little bit away out of like the progression system itself. It feels more like there's just a beginning and an end, and there's really nothing along the way. And I'm sorry, but this is not a moment where the journey matters and the friends you made along the way will count. Because
it isn't.
No, because unfortunately, when you're building up a class, one of the biggest things people love is getting new shit for their class. And suffice to say, I will say it is a bit lackluster that when you build up a character, it's like, well, I want to take these skills to get to the next rank, so that the next rank can mean I can buy more skills and things that I could have bought regardless if this rank system was here or not.
Yeah, and not every clan gets like a cool clan only kata. Like I think a few of them have them. I know the Phoenix do.
Yes, they do.
The Lion have like a shuji, where it's like a very like battlefield commandy kind of shuji technique.
Yes.
There's like a few of those, but I don't think every clan. Like I think the Crab get Lord Heater's Grasp as one too.
The Crane get like a talking one. The Scorpion also get a shuji as well.
The Dragons sit on their mountain.
Yep. As they are
forever uninteresting. But no. So yeah, I mean,
You could have. I would say on this part, like the list is really just there. You could have just stated like you just need this amount to get to your final rank technique, and then you could have left it alone. Like you don't even have to build a curriculum. You could just say that everything just gives you max points, and that you just need to accrue this amount in order to get to your actual final school technique. And it would have done the same thing. It would be the same thing, except now you'd have more freedom to truly build a character that you want, and not be limited by the fact that if I don't buy my curriculum, I'm slowed down from getting to rank 6.
The only thing it like uniquely does, it seems, is that it gives you access to certain techniques that you wouldn't otherwise meet the prereqs for. That's like literally the only thing like so it will do. That will really distinguish it, because otherwise, everyone has access to the same skills. They can all raise the same rings. Most of the kata and shuji and invocations, if you're a shugenja, are like anyone can learn them. So I think 80 to 90% of them are that way. So
I think it would definitely would have been nicer if they had added a rank 3, so to speak, kind of like a mid tier.
Yeah,
something to help kind of give us like, okay, it does feel a little bit more like a ladder instead of like 2 long rungs with a lot of space in it.
I'm jumping, gotta make it. Oh, I can't pull myself up. No. But yeah, another thing that's cool, and another reason I really like running it, are what's called complications, which is also something you could just straight up do in 4th edition.
Yeah, again.
So you have there's advantages, passions, and distinctions. You have disadvantages, anxieties, and adversities. You kind of, as the GM, want to have these come up in a significant narrative way every game for most of, if not all of the characters. And this is one of the main way that a character can get a void point back, because you just don't get all your void when you sleep. That it doesn't work like that.
Just meditate, bro.
Yeah, that doesn't work that way either.
What? 0 out of 10.
There's a ritual tea ceremony, which if you roll well enough, you can give everyone a void point back. But you kind of want like, or your dishads can help them give you back sometimes. But there'll be like these narrative moments where called I had the word, I said it a minute. It's not conflicts. Complications, thank you. Where, say, I'll give you an example. One of my characters is haunted as a scorpion samurai killed the woman he was betrothed to and somehow sealed her soul inside of a flute and gifted it to him. So he has this horrible person that he wants to kill, and he's also haunted by her spirit. He was like a musician in the Toritaka, and he plays his flute, and her ghost like comes and is haunting him and is driving him towards this path of revenge, kind of. And
that dude up, bro.
He's like trying to do stuff for his lord, and she's showing up every session, going, remember, he killed me, you have to like go east. And there's the whole pincer launch thing going on right now. So in opportune moments, like he was talking to a scorpion character, she basically like kind of possessed the scorpion and started to talk to him through her, and he got a whole bunch of strife and got a void point because of it. So something else you could do, there's like a conflict will or something where you can roll dice and you'll pit people's ninja and Garys against each other. They can get void points back through that. There's like all sorts of cool little narrative ways to get void points back.
The game really emphasizes both emphasis on your own personal desires, and I will say this, L5R 5th edition does exactly what I think the game truly shines its best at, and that is the difference between what is required of you and the humanity of what you are.
Yeah.
Which, if you went and listened to our first podcast, one of our first podcasts ever, my topic that I chose for L5R specifically was one thing you don't like about the game, and that I've said Shorito. And this is exactly the perfect example of it, is that because the whole point of Bushido is to test who you are as a person towards what is expected of you, towards your family, towards your lord, towards society, and the clan that you are a part of. And the clashing and the clashing ideologies between the two of what is doing right is human and what is doing what is expected of you for the land itself. And Shoryodo doesn't really do anything that, because Shoryodo, in my eyes, was just nothing more than an aspect of why Bushido is so damn hard to perform.
Mm-hmm.
So this game does exactly that, but it gives mechanical benefits for it too. It actually wants you to run into these complications, these disadvantages, to activate them, to have you face your anxieties, because when you do, there are benefits for these issues when they come up, and it wants to push the players towards that, and I like that. I do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I like
embrace
how
the
it's
conflict.
done. Yeah, but definitely the fact that it wants to push you towards the story of you facing off against society. Now, that's not how everybody wants to play their game, though. Obviously,
No.
Some people are going to want to be like, I just want to punch something in the face, bro. I don't really want to care about my anxieties.
Sure.
And it's like, sure.
Depends on the group. And that's what I was worried about running this. I was like, because, I mean, we've done a lot of the, the big us versus, the big bad evil thing that wants to, end the universe or do all this other stuff. And though, I mean, this is dealing with the Onyx storyline, there's going to be a lot of that in the background, but I more wanted to do a war story. And what I was worried about, I was like, this seems really cool. I want to at least like try to run a game of it and see how it goes. And I told my players, it's like, if y'all don't like it, we can go back to 4th edition. We can just play that. It'll be fine. So I also wanted to like challenge myself, because I have a thesis, a hypothesis, if you will, that this game will handle like more courtly stuff better, because I mean, again, it's a narrative game. I
believe it absolutely handles court stuff way better.
Yeah.
I don't even play 5th edition, and I know it handles it better.
Yeah.
That's how well designed it is.
Whereas 4th edition, if you want a more combat-focused game, is going to do that better, and the crunch is going to be more satisfying. So that's my theory. So I want to do a very, like, this is a war story, we've got multiple lords within clans that have different things they want that are conflicting with each other. So that's where most of the political drama is going to come from. But at the same time, we are the crab. We're allied with the scorpion. The lion are on their borders. They are thirsty for revenge. We're going to have to deal with them. So there's going to be lots of fighting and lots of combat. Obviously, the threat of the Shadowlands is looming with Konpeki's betrayal of Rokugan. You're going to have all that stuff. And we're going to have a lot of fighting in the game. And I want to, challenge myself to make that interesting as a GM in a game that seems, like it's like the other version's going to handle that better, where we could have probably played that and had a lot more good time. But my players are really loving the samurai drama aspects that they weren't always really encouraged to explore with their characters in older versions of the game, because it's just like, well, I got my disad, and I've always looked at disads and advantages and stuff as kind of like building where a lot of your samurai drama is going to come from your character in 4th edition. And this game just super reinforces that. And it's kind of like making them explore that in ways they didn't really consider it before, is where they saw advantages and disadvantages as just points that would come up every so often. Does that make sense? Yeah,
no, that makes sense. I hear you.
So, yeah, I really wanted to challenge myself with this. I'm having a blast running it. I'm glad I decided to do it. I'm glad my players are enjoying it. I still think I like 4th edition better, but I like to keep an open mind, or I try to, anyways. I wanted to do this. Spooky said, a lot of it does a lot of good stuff, and I like it's not the same game at all, really. And it does some stuff really good. It does some stuff a lot better. The other game does a lot of stuff a lot better. So it's just kind of like who are your players, and like you were saying, some players just want to walk up and punch stuff. They want to kill bandits. They want to fight Oni. They want to deal with Maho Suka. That's what they're into, and for that, they're going to get a lot more enjoyment, I think, out of 4th edition. But you also got your very heavily the characters who just want to role play. They find combat boring. It's a slog. It ruins the pace of the game. They don't care about that stuff. They're more interested in their character dynamic. Then this game is for you.
The original thought was that 4th edition is probably going to be better for fighting, and that this new edition is probably going to be better when it comes to talking, because as you pointed out, there's a lot more crunch, and when it comes to combat, crunch does tend to play out more interestingly, even if it is a bit slower. Whereas it doesn't work out so well when you're so limited on your focuses for like talkie parts, where that I think is 5th edition really excels at. So I think you're hitting the nail hitting the nail on the head with that one. I don't think you're wrong. I agree with you. That said, I will also agree with you on that. I still think 4th edition is better. I like how it is. I like numbers over narrative dice. I'm not a big fan of from a more
I'm still not a huge fan of the narrative dice. Like, it hasn't really won me over. Like, I'm not like completely 100% against them like I used to be. I was just like, they're anathema. Why would you ever have that? Like, they're neat, but like they still don't like really do it for me. Like, I just like I like the numbers on the dice better.
It's hands down. I'm a more of a mathy person. I like my numbers, so that's why I'm always going to kind of like dice that use numbers, so to speak. It's just a very fun big part for me. Is that so? The narrative dice will never do well for me. It's also from just a publication standpoint. Is that I'm not a very big fan of like essentially forcing a game to utilize a very specific style of dice in order to make that game work. I'm just not a big fan of that concept as well. Like, in order to play our game, you can't use any of the dice you've ever bought before. You have to use this specific dice. And yeah, there's charts out there. I know. Someone's gonna be like, you have charts.
Yeah, they're cumbersome.
The same. It's cumbersome. It takes time.
You're converting.
You have to look at it. And unless you got even a little chart next to you, still have to go like, okay, I've got 3 of these. I've got 2. I've got a 1, a 5, a 6, a 7. So I've got one of these, one of these, one of these, and one of these. That's even imaginary. That still takes time. When you could just be like, okay, I've got these 5, which means I can do this right off the dice. There you go, done. You don't need to convert. You're done. And numbers are that same concept where it's like numbers. I've got a 5, 6, 7, 8. That's boom. There's my final number. We're done. And then you move on.
Yeah.
And then there's other things out there that have added up things really fast. You can add those numbers pretty quickly when you're starting to roll up mathematics. I mean, it'll definitely be slower than looking at a chart, I guess, but I've never been a big fan of that from that perspective as well. I still stand by, even after having, because I did take a chance to look at least at the 5th edition book. I like that the unmasking was changed. I'm glad that it was. But I will still stand by the fact that I think at the end of the day, the only thing I'm truly jealous of 5th edition having that 4th edition didn't. I shouldn't say jealous. It's not really a jealousy thing. I kind of wish 4th edition had was the more the adaptable and the flowing way of utilizing rings. That really does make me want to just take it and be like, I want to implement this into my 4th edition games, because I really do like the idea that like assigning a ring, or technically in 4th edition, because they're broken down into their traits, you can just say like, okay, you're making a knowledge, you're making the courtier knowledge roll just because you used logic. You're making a courtier emotion. You're used emotions. You're like talking to people. You could use courtier awareness. You're like kind of standing your ground, setting lines, being thorough and well thought out, being straight to the point. That's willpower.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh, you're kind of pointing out things. You're kind of showing them and opening them and giving them examples. You're accessing a way for them to kind of recognize your force of self onto them. For your argument, then that would be perception. You're a perceptive individual.
I want to punch some with my words, meta. Strength.
That's just strength.
Strength courtier.
Roll me courtier.
I want to see that check be made
your
one day.
Your word hits them so hard it does damage. Yeah, that's absolutely the part I really wish I could see more of. So
yeah,
actually give a reason to use the ring benefit advantages as well in L5 4th edition.
Yep, you totally can. So, I mean, I'm glad I've went into it with an open mind. I'm enjoying running it. It's been a blast. I mean, just because it's different, too, and it's, putting me out of my comfort zone as a GM, and we should totally all do another one-shot of it sometime.
We should. Well, we can definitely get around to a one-shot. Yeah, I don't think that would ever hurt.
Yep. So, that's what I got, and that's my piece on it.
Hey,
boom! Justice has been served tonight.
I don't think that's.
Are you happy with the verdict, Meta?
I am. I think.
Are you happy with tonight's
I stand by what. Yeah, tonight's topics are good. I stand by what I said back in the beta, and I say it now. I think 5th edition's fine. I think it'll be a good edition. I just don't think it's
different strokes for different folks.
It's just the same way I think about like 5th edition. 5th edition for D&D is fine. It's great, but I love my 3.5 in Pathfinder. I can't get over them.
I'll never be on board with you guys on that one.
That's because you're wrong. It's okay.
I like numbers too, but there's just too much for even me there.
Look, Obs, there's people who are wrong and they have to live with those opinions, okay?
But you can have your like 40 different skills, okay? You keep them.
I just want to put all the numbers together, Obs. I just want to make $1 million.
It's just you, and it's the meme with the, from, what's it called?
Trying to add up my math numbers.
With equations around your head and stuff.
Yes.
The, what is it? The movie with the baby and the guy gets married.
That's not specific
at
all.
It's the 4 guys and they go to Vegas and stuff happens. The wedding night, the bachelor
Hangover.
Party. Yes, the Hangover. Thank you. Zach Galifianakis. The equations and numbers around his he's like, oh. Yeah, it's like you, but it's like
I love my
Thaco. No, it's not that because it's 3-5. It's like hey, what's my circumstantial AC? It's like circumstantial AC bonus +2, flanking bonus +2.
Because numbers make it really easy to like balance things because when your game is balanced around the ideas like this is how much damage you should be doing around this level and this is kind of like what you are.
Oh
you
yeah,
got, like,
for
so many
sure.
Samples. It's like it's so easy to rebalance things, and I love
because we have statistics that prove things and help us adjust curves and averages and all that good stuff.
For all that I hate about the roll keep system and how it can get very explodey in 4th edition, I will say that it is really nice that you have only a static range of 1 keep 1 to 10 keep 10. Because that means you kind of work within a specific range of like essentially the lowest DC you can have for like to have is like 1, and a 10 keep 10's average DC is 60. There you go. Everything in between can be based off of that at that point. It's great.
But we've had this discussion before. Let's put this show to bed. Is there anything else you want to say tonight, Meta?
Man, you put me on the spot, dude. Oh, get Iceborne. If you haven't played Monster Hunter World Iceborne, go get it.
My roommate's playing a lot of Monster Hunter.
I enjoy it.
It went on sale, and he finally bought it because he's a man who will only buy stuff that goes on sale.
Just go pick it up, put it in your PlayStation. Make sure you
push the cross button. It's always been the cross button, people.
Always been the cross button, never an X. But you press that button.
Everyone acted like that was such a shocking revelation. It's like they've been saying that for years. Crosso. The Crosso button.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right.
It's like, what?
Finish your thought, Meta.
It's mine. I gotta do the outro.
No, that was my interjection to lead to the outro. But you can do the outro if you want.
I'll do it. Goodbye. All right, end it off.